Hi guys, welcome back to exmolex. Today I'm going to be continuing a new series I've started where you guys share with me stories of personal experiences you've had with Mormon apostles. So far we've done stories about David A. Bednar and Dallin H. Oaks. A lot of you guys have really been enjoying this series, particularly the ex-Mormons, people who used to believe with all their heart that these leaders were called by God and spoke with God on behalf of not only the church, but the world as a whole. For people like us, I think it's not only interesting, but in some ways therapeutic to hear about what these men are really like in a one-on-one interaction. Because for most of us, we just grow up hearing their talks in general conference. We grow up being taught little tidbits of wisdom from them during our lessons. And of course, we are told that they are called of God. So they're very, very important men. And hearing about what they're really like when you get to meet them face to face or hear a talk from them that isn't, a pre-written, pre-scripted conference talk is very interesting. Now, of course, there's always going to be Mormons who watch my videos and are upset about the content. Like I said in the previous one, this is for fun. If you don't want to watch, if it's going to be upsetting to you, don't watch it. And to be fair, I am including the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if people send in good stories about experiences they have with these apostles, I'm going to share those too. I understand. Okay, you know what? I'm a chronic over-explainer. Those of you who've been here for a while probably have picked up on that. So I'm not going to go into every single possible reason why I'm doing this and why those of us who enjoy it. If you're hell-bent on disliking this series, don't watch it. And if you're hell-bent on watching it anyway and leaving comments about how upsetting it is to you, I can't do anything to help you with that. So anyway, this week's video is going to be about Apostle Jeffrey R. Holland. Now, my experiences with Holland are limited. Never met the guy. I do remember that one of his conference talks was about depression, and I listened to it a lot when I was in the throes of depression. I thought that the talk was really good, and I thought that listening to it over and over would help pull me out of depression. There was a point in time where Jeffrey R. Holland was one of my favorite apostles because a lot of the talks he gave in conference I felt like were really good. After leaving the church and hearing more from him, particularly the taffy pulling patty cake talk that he gave, don't love that. There was also an interview I think he gave with, maybe it was BBC, that I was very dishonest, and I didn't like that. Then of course there's the musket fire talk, which a lot of you are probably familiar with. So I don't know, when I was a member of the church, my feelings on him were pretty dang positive. I liked him quite a lot, and as I've learned more about him, seen him in different contexts, he comes across to me like generally he's trying to be a good guy. It seems like he gets fired up pretty easily, which, it's just a personality trait. There's people that are more like that than others. And like we talked about with the previous videos, like David A. Bednar seems to be just more of an asshole than Dallin H. Oaks is. Jeffrey R. Holland seems like he just gets fired up easily and might speak out of anger more than somebody else would. But I'm going to read you these stories and you let me know what you think. Elder Holland came to visit my state conference while I was already on my way out of the church, but thought I would go and listen to an apostle and see if that would help me make my decision. We very rarely get any general authorities in our country, so this was a big deal, and Holland had been one of my favorites. I didn't meet him personally, but the talk he gave left me feeling very uneasy. He was talking to the youth and about how they need to give tithing of their time, aka go on a mission. The part that disturbed me is that he said many times, "Give me your tithing, your time, and you will be blessed." He did not say give to the Lord. He repeated it many times, "Give me this or that." This meeting was the last time I went to church. He seemed so full of himself and almost compared himself to God. Very interesting. It's kind of a, definitely a weird way to refer to it. I don't know if I've seen them do that in conference talks before, but there was somebody that pointed out in the comments on when I, asked people about leaving an experience that they had with Holland. There was somebody that pointed out that the conference talks are vetted and rehearsed and scripted. So the talks that are given in like a state conference or a youth conference, things like that, are less polished. They typically haven't had somebody like go over the talk with a fine-tooth comb and say like, you shouldn't say that, it's not PC, or that sounds a little weird, don't say it that way. So oftentimes the weirdest talks that you hear are going to be these ones that are during a youth conference or a state conference or MTC things or things like that. And that makes sense to me because a lot of times if you go to one of those conferences, if it's not like being recorded, they ask you not to record. And so if you find those like secret recordings that people have done, a lot of times the talks are odd. Got to hear both Holland and Uchtdorf speak some years ago. At the end, they legit booked it out of there, not bothering to talk to anyone or even shake hands, as if we were just commoners not worth talking to. So much for the leaders being witnesses of Christ. Yeah, I mean, there was a time, I think it was Elder Ballard, either Elder Ballard or El Tom Perry came and spoke at a conference I was at. And I don't think that we stayed to even try to shake their hands because we were at the back and there were so many people. But I imagine that like most people go hoping that they're going to be able to shake one of their hands because like we talked about, they have celebrity status within the Mormon church. But like, who knows what kind of plans they had for the rest of the day, you know? So I got to meet Holland when he came to speak at our state conference. I was probably 13 or 14 at the time, and I don't really remember what he talked about, but I do remember everyone being completely in awe. We did the whole line up and wait to shake his hand thing, and I remember it feeling like we were all waiting to meet a huge celebrity or something. He made his way down the line, not rushing, but not speaking individually to each person necessarily. But there were at least 250 in line. When he got to me and my sister standing next to me, he shook our hands, but he stopped while shaking my hand and pinched my cheek, very old person coded, and called me pretty. My sister was so jealous she wouldn't talk to me for the rest of the day, and I remember feeling super special, maybe even chosen. Blah. Thinking about it now, he was an old guy who touched my face randomly and commented on my appearance. Innocent compliment, maybe. Creepy compliment, also maybe. LOL, who knows? Pretty tame experience all in all. Yeah, I think that at that age, I would have been all over that. Like, I would have told that story to anybody that would listen because, again, celebrity status. I haven't met him, but there was a story that went around my mission where he asked an elder what his purpose was as a missionary. When the elder started to recite the missionary purpose, Elder Holland slapped him across the face, and hard. Wow. I mean, if true, that's insane. I'm not saying that you're lying, but like, rumors that go around the mission are not always true, you know? But yeah, if that's true, that's absolutely insane behavior. I wouldn't say one way or another whether that's true or not, but I will say that from stuff that I've heard about Holland, it seems like he can get fired up and that he could say or do something out of anger without thinking about it first. Saw him eating breakfast alone at a Marriott bed and breakfast. He was kind, and he invited us to a special state conference. We were just passing through town, so we didn't attend. I saw him speak about a year after leaving the church. I knew for sure I no longer believed, but thought it would be cool to see him speak in person because at that point I had heard nothing bad about him and held no hard feelings against the church. Seeing him speak took away any doubts I'd still had that the church might be true and that I'd made the wrong decision because his stories were so meaningless, and I realized I didn't agree with literally anything he had to say, even though there was nothing hateful or damaging in that particular talk. It was just so boring, insignificant, and a little pompous, and everyone acted like he'd said some very profound things afterwards as if he hadn't just told random life stories and made up vague metaphors that didn't quite land. You know, if there's something that Mormons are good at, it is coming up with metaphors to throw into a talk. I remember when he came to the MTC back in 06 and he said he was a special witness of Christ and that we should know what that means, and was saying how he visits with Christ and speaks with him, yada yada. What a liar. He was trying his best to manipulate us. You know, that's really interesting considering, I think it was Elder Oaks. Somebody correct me if you can remember better than me, but I'm pretty sure Elder Oaks went on record saying that none of the apostles have ever actually seen or spoken with Christ like you see and speak to a regular person. It's all more like, you know, feelings and having the Spirit in your heart and it giving you direction, and that's how they communicate with Christ. So it's interesting that Elder Holland would say directly like, no, I see and speak with Christ on a regular basis. A friend of mine with darker skin was on her mission in a Spanish-speaking country. Not Holland, but Ballard said as she stood in line to greet him, "I can't believe I have to shake the hands of all these filthy people." His eyes went big as saucers when she then spoke back to him in English when he turned to meet her next. Jerk. Wow. That's crazy. So that's Elder Ballard, not Elder Holland. And that's totally okay. Like if you guys want to throw in other experiences you have with apostles that I didn't ask about, I don't mind that at all, because I know that some apostles, like people have spoken with a lot more than others. Like with Ballard, he's dead, right? I'm pretty sure he's been dead for a while. The ones that aren't around anymore, there probably aren't going to be as many people that have experiences with them. So that's totally fine. But yeah, that sounds really crazy that he would have said that and just assumed that nobody spoke English. Back when I was a good, faithful Mormon, Elder Holland came to my stake to give a youth devotional. I think I was 16. I got there early with my friends and had a good seat 3 rows from the front. A 70 that was there with him gave a talk, and then it was Elder Holland's turn. I remember always feeling that his conference talks were very eloquent and well thought out. This talk was very different. He essentially just yelled at us for 30 minutes and called us ungrateful for the work that the First Presidency does. The unofficial motto of the fireside was, "Don't be stupid," which we were told several times. He also complained about how he should be retired, but instead he has to fly around and talk to teenagers. I mean, you could just not. You could say you don't want to be an apostle anymore, but okay. I, 3 rows in with bright pink hair, kept my eyes down, but I kept feeling an icy stare on my beacon of a scalp. Whenever I dared to look up, my suspicions were proven correct and Elder Holland would be glaring daggers at me. I'm sure he is a perfectly nice individual. It seems that we caught him on a bad day. Everyone was very quiet leaving afterwards, just staring at each other as if to say, did that really just happen? My young women's leader, who I had only ever heard positive things about the church from, left saying to me, "I think that was the angriest talk I have ever heard. That was rude of him," which was a very nice way to put things. I just wonder what we did to set him off so bad. You know, it could be anything. It could be that he's just a grumpy person. It could be that he was fired up that day for some other reason. Who knows, really? But that sounds very uncomfortable. And it actually sounds a little bit similar to some of the things that we heard about Elder Bednar in the previous videos. Not awesome. Not great. Back in 2004, I was one of several adult leaders attending a stake youth conference near his home by Heber City. I ran into him at a convenience store where he was arguing with the checkout person. I said hello, pretending I hadn't overheard the previous conversation. He was crass at best. After he stormed out of the store, the clerk rolled her eyes. She mentioned to me and my wife that Elder Holland had a reputation of being rude and demanding. She said, "I really wished he just let his wife come instead." Apparently, Sister Holland was well liked, but only came into the store when he was out of town. So maybe the grumpy attitude is kind of his normal. He was my great-grandpa's best friend, meaning I met him at my great-grandpa's funeral. He was obviously sad, but nice enough to shake our hands, and I'm pretty sure he held my little sister, who he remarked had Holland cheeks. She had these cute chubby cheeks and a serious expression. He's always been an apostle that I looked forward to hearing from, and one that always had pretty decent talks. Yeah, I agree with that. I also thought that his conference talks were pretty good, but as we can see, maybe his conference talks that aren't so thoroughly scripted are not as good. I had a chance to hear from him at a fireside that took place at SLCC. I want to say this was late 2017 or early 2018. He gave a talk about forgiveness and how it's unfair to hold loved ones accountable to past mistakes that they had already apologized for and grown from. Honestly, a pretty good talk. Even as an exmo, I feel this wasn't a bad lesson. I even remember him making a joke that I never expected a Mormon apostle would. I don't remember it word for word or the context in which it was said, but it was something to the effect of, a band at a bar is like a close baseball game. The bases are fully loaded. It was kind of shocking but funny. I left the church a few years later. For a while after that, I thought Holland was still a kind and compassionate man, just misguided. However, after hearing the BBC interview, the taffy pulling talk, and the musket fire fiasco, I see that he's capable of being very petty, vindictive, and even dishonest when it's convenient for him. Unlike Bednar, who seems unpleasant no matter what, Holland strikes me as the type to be very kind when you agree with him, but not so kind if you don't. So we had a pretty good mixture of like good, bad, and neutral experiences with Holland in there. I'm curious to hear what you guys think, so make sure to leave a comment and let me know if you've met Holland before and what your experience was like. Also, let me know what apostle you want to hear about next. I think the next person that people wanted to hear about the most was the current prophet, Russell M. Nelson, so let me know if that sounds interesting to you. Huge thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel. I appreciate you guys so much. An extra special thank you to Doug Davis for supporting at the Demon tier on my Patreon. If you guys would like to support the channel and the work that I do here, there are links to do so in the description below. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one.